About 25 years ago, when my daughter was a little child, she and I were creeping along on the Fairfax County Parkway, on the other side of the river. We were in slow traffic near where it intersects with Interstate 66. It was a new stretch of the road, and her attention was transfixed on the activity outside the car's window. A massive development of suburban homes was slated to be built there, and you could see these huge bulldozers clearing the land. They were knocking down old trees and churning up the land to reveal the red clay of Virginia. And suddenly, I heard her sniffling, and then I realized that she was crying. She turned to me with tears streaming down her face, and I asked, "What is the matter? Why are you crying?" She asked, "What will happen to the animals?" Her question took me aback, and my first response was to console her. But just as I was about to say, "Oh, they'll be all right," and make up some lie about how the people had carefully removed them, I went silent. And her sadness overtook me, because I had gone by there every day on my commute to and from work, and it had never occurred to me to be concerned about the loss of habitat for all the wild animals who lived in that stretch of woods. I had grown so accustomed to houses and roads that I had lost my connection to the critters in my backyard. But my daughter was still connected. In the bedtime stories that we read to her at night, the animals were characters with names and families and homes, just like us. They had feelings and lives of their own. It took a child with all her innocence to show me what I had become blind to. I ask you, have we lost our sense of connection to the web of life? And I don't mean we as in individuals, but I mean we as in humanity. How did we get to this point? And what would it take to snap us out of our delusion? The ancient consciousness of our pre-agrarian ancestors is still with us, but it has been stuffed deep inside. They intuitively perceived a spirit flowing through everything, including themselves, even before they developed a language and gave this force a name. They must have sensed its presence. Imagine feeling a connection to all of creation without needing words. Just bowing to the mystery of the universe with awe and respect. No creator separated from the created, just creation all around in a unity of infinite oneness. Even after the advent of language, this spiritual unity infused itself in stories with deep understanding of their relationship with nature. I'm sure there were a lot of trial and error in this relationship and a heavy dose of humility. Think about the poor souls who ate poisonous plants and got bitten by deadly insects so that their kin, us, could learn about what to avoid. This ancient consciousness sees the universe as alive. The galaxies, planets, mountains, streams, forests, and oceans are all part of a living, interconnected organism. As are the animals, the plants, and the microbial life that feed and are fed by this complex creation. But as humanity learned to harness this abundance and cultivate the land, something profound shifted. A new consciousness, let's call it a modern consciousness, developed. Humanity began to mimic the complexity of the planet by organizing itself into larger and more specialized structures. The spirit world morphed into gods and goddesses, each with different powers, living in separate realms, disconnected from their own creations. The hierarchy that this modern consciousness created in our civilizations mirrored a stratified view of the universe. Gods sitting at the top in the heavens, then humans, animals, insects, and finally the earth itself at the bottom. This modern consciousness no longer saw the universe or the planet as alive and unified. To understand the world, we humans learned to deconstruct it into finer and finer levels of abstraction. Everything was viewed as separate, in competition, and there for the taking. We built ever more complex tools using logic and requiring energy that we extracted from the lifeless ground. We moved the course of rivers, lopped the tops off of mountains, and we denuded the forests, all to feed this insatiable hunger for dominance. And along the way, humanity has uncovered amazing discoveries into how things work. And we have used this knowledge to benefit ourselves, to live longer, safer, and more secure. But we have created an order that fits our perception of the world. Instead of spirits and gods, we only believe what we can see or prove in a laboratory. Or we create fantastic worlds of our imagination to entertain ourselves. The mysterious, connective tissue of life has faded into the background, and we have become lost. David Christopher, in his book Holy Universe, writes that the overarching story of this modern consciousness is that humanity is the grandest creation of the universe. And the earth was created solely for its sake. Humanity is separate from the web of life, is the ruler of the web of life, and can take whatever it wishes from the web of life without consequences. But we are learning that this all comes at a great cost. Wildly excessive amounts of carbon in the atmosphere from the burning of fossil fuels has drastically altered the delicate balance of temperature, water, and sustainability of life. Mass killings of fish and mammals has disrupted the food chain that we depend on. Huge disparities of wealth lead to wars, diseases, and mass migration of populations. Over-reliance on technology drives us farther away from the natural intelligence embedded in the diversity, harmony, and flow of life. With every silver bullet that we create, we end up with a new problem that requires yet another silver bullet. There are limits to everything, though. The universe doesn't really care if a species blows itself up out of foolishness. A new order, a new complexity will always emerge. There have been 5 mass extinctions on this planet. What's one more? But thankfully, mercifully, many, many people are beginning to wake up and realize that we cannot stay on this path indefinitely. Instead of ignoring and fighting nature, the time has come to reunite with the infinite spirit of life that never went away. It has always been here and has always been inside us, even when we forgot how to sense it. Recently, I was in Orlando visiting the Universal Studios theme park. It was like walking into a mashup of movies and television shows. To get from the main gate to the amusement ride, we entered into a series of recreations designed to pull us away from the real world. We crossed over a bridge, and then we saw King Kong's Skull Mountain. I looked down and I saw a steampunk candy factory to my right. All the while, we were hearing sounds that sounded vaguely familiar, but yet unfamiliar, kind of different. And then we came to the first ride. It was a huge roller coaster spiraling above our heads. It was the Hulk. It looked like this mysterious gamma ray weapon in which the passengers were shot out into a series of curlicues and loop-de-loops. Everyone was screaming and holding on for dear life. I was down below in a crowd looking up at the spectacle, when out of the corner of my eye, I saw a duck followed by 3 baby chicks and another adult duck. They were crossing the plaza where everyone was standing. Immediately, everyone forgot about the make-believe, and we instantly turned into a bunch of gawking spectators as if the Queen of England's motorcade had suddenly appeared. Some people became passenger guards, letting the ducks through. People stepped aside, and little family of ducks passed. We all took our cell phones out and started snapping photos. Something ancient, something simple and beautiful was stirred in each and every one of us. Everyone was smiling like little children. In that moment, we were all connected not just to the ducks, but to each other. We were standing right in the crossroads of the ancient and the modern. The way ahead for us does not require us to revert to an ancient way of life or abandon all of our modern consciousness. That's just not going to happen. Instead, a middle way seems to be emerging out of the crisis that we find ourselves. A new perspective in which the wordless intuition of connection and awe meets the logic and creativity of the modern world. A planetary mindset in which we understand that our collective fates are all tied together. This is what it means to respect the interdependent web of life of which we are all a part. To revere it as a sacred expression of the infinite spirit of life. To realize that we are the baby ducks crossing the street and the smiling children watching them cross. We are both the painter and the canvas being painted upon. As David Christopher describes it, the creative force of the infinite flows throughout and embraces the universe, whole and complete, ever-changing, ever-creative, and ever-destructive as the infinite plays and dances. As it seizes catastrophe to create anew, as it yearns for ever greater order, ever greater complexity, ever greater consciousness, and ever greater elegance, as it drives itself toward life. We are this creative force of the infinite, manifest in the form of human beings. We are an integral part of the ways of the universe and are subject to the lessons of the web of life. We have never been separated. And so, we are called to a deeper communion with the earth, to know and love our place within the web of life, to be a sanctuary for the planet so the planet can be a sanctuary for us. 25 years ago, I wasn't sufficiently awakened to realize that when my daughter asked me what will happen to the animals, she was really asking, what will happen to us? A new planetary consciousness requires humanity to wake up from the illusion of the separated self. Not only are we humans intricately connected and interdependent on all life forms on this planet, we are also highly interdependent on each other. And it has always been that way. As the modern world, with all its inventions and scientific discoveries, has tried to separate us from the suffering of the world, it has instead brought us all together into a much more tightly bundled coexistence. Business transactions, communications, and the flow of ideas can move across the planet at the speed of light now. The ripple effects of any one action that used to take generations now spread instantaneously and can reach just about every nook and cranny of this planet. The Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh calls this interbeing. He uses the example of a cloud and a piece of paper to illustrate this concept of interbeing. Thich Nhat Hanh says that there is a cloud floating in a sheet of paper. Because without the clouds, there would be no rain. Without the rain, the trees would not grow. And without the trees, we could not make a sheet of paper. The cloud and the paper inter-are. If the cloud is not here, the paper is not here. In the same way, we inter-are with the mountains, because without the minerals that are exposed through the lifting and eroding of the mountains, we could not exist. If the mountain is not here, we are not here. We and everything on this planet inter-are. There is no independent self. Awareness that I am made up of not I leads to the understanding of non-self. And it is the realization of non-self that brings an end to suffering. At this present moment, our country is scared to take the bold step forward that is needed to reunite with our environment. We have leaders who are stuck in the mindset of domination and the illusion of separation, while the rest of the world begins to awaken. And their fear has real consequences, not just to the animals in the wild, but to all us animals. But rather than panic or despair, we are called to go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. To come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with the forethought of grief. To come into the presence of still water. We are called to find that place of interbeing with the wild things. A place of compassion in which we are compelled to protect planetary life in the same manner that we protect ourselves, our children, and our loved ones. Yes, we must act in the political sphere and in places where we have direct impact, such as our communities, our congregations, our homes, and in our hearts. The new planetary consciousness calls us to safeguard our planet as we would our own health, for they are one in the same. As in all things, it's not the results that ultimately matter, but the actions that we take. Transformation only comes through immersion. Change only happens by letting go of the self and embracing the creative force deep inside us. The same force that makes us one. May it be so.